Please welcome Bill Weiland.
Hello, everybody.
First day of the double bill.
It's getting serious.
So tell us about the industry right now. What's happening out there?
Well, from my perspective, you've got something like 15 to 18% of the population with some type of household penetration, clean deck, natural, organic. The marketplace is probably set up for more like 22 to 25%. So I would consider there are headwinds in the channel for the first time in a long time, but it's not as simple as, Whole Foods is going through a little period of struggle, adapting to nationalization, call it, and the emergence of the club sector, Walmart, Kroger. I mean, those are all contributing factors. I cite a clear example. I go to Las Vegas now. At the friggin' Palazzo Hotel, they got a juice farm, HPP, cold pressed shots, value-added stuff. I mean, just everywhere you turn, food service, fast casual, you can get quality offerings. I expect we'll get back to double-digit growth. While food remains relatively flat over the next 10 years, even on a much larger base, I think we will have years of 10, 12% growth again.
So are we seeing then this channel sorting moment where some of these plays are starting to find whether they should be on-premise, off-premise, conventional, natural, while all the retail channels are up in the air and shifting themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, every brand's got to look at that now. I mean, it used to be a clear formula. You'd start in natural food store environment, specialty grocery, build towards scale, maybe get to $5 million, proof of concept, and then you would expand and find your partners, whether it's Kroger, Target, et cetera. And I'm counting the Wegmans and Deerbergs in that first tranche. Now, because of both consumer demand and other retail options stepping up, coupled with the fact that natural product stores don't merchandise certain categories well. So I'll give you examples: True North, Mrs. May, Sahali, productive builds and exits, almost no business in the natural channel. Natural food stores don't have great sets for things like nut clusters, dried fruit, et cetera. Mixology is ready to hit. Have you seen my home bar, for example? Mixology is, all we need is environment. We need 4-foot to 12-foot sets, depending on the account, the square footage. Club sodas, ginger beers, colas, mixer lines, et cetera. So you got to kind of review the whole picture and look at what your goals are, your targets. And there's also going to be a sorting out, because not everybody who's playing in natural and organic today from the retail front is going to effectively be building market share. Like, I think Whole Foods is going to make a comeback. I'm one of the few, but I do. I think most of what's going on with Whole Foods is not related to competition. It's internal. They've got to get back to the premium provider. It's the best shopping experience in the country. They can still win, and I think they will. Growing pains. For sure.
Knowing that there's all this flux, what's your brand review process like these days?
Guys, we're fortunate. I mean, we learned a long time ago that you concentrate on the art or the craft. I tell people even, when you're building toward exit, like let's say it's the first couple of years, people say, hey, that's where we're going to build value. And then they almost talk like there's this very different bent when they're building towards exit. And I say, really? Aren't we always building value? I mean, that was our thing. Concentrate on the art and the craft. So we built a model at Presence. We're in our 28th year now, handle about $4 billion in sales, over 500 employees, and people come to us. So we do no prospecting. We literally look at about 100 new brands trying to come on board, many of whom would love for us to invest in them through our fund. And we pick up less than 2%, usually about 100.
100 a month, year?
About a 6-week cycle. Okay. So about 100 brands on a 6-week cycle.
Okay, so that's about 1,000 brands a year.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it work or not work?
Do you mean the process or a brand becoming successful?
A brand becoming successful.
Well, there's a lot of ingredients. I probably differ a little bit in the way I put my lens on the business in this regard. When I talk to most investors, they say the most important aspect when they're looking at new business is who's behind it, the entrepreneur. Not the case with me. I want to see the right product, the right category. I could give countless examples where team was right, food was wrong, they did not succeed. Now, certainly if you have a great starting material, great product, you still need to build a big team, but I think that's kind of the responsibility of a company like ours that has contacts for, I've been in the industry 38 years. From an investment team perspective, you've got to be able to look at, you certainly want people with a great work ethic and a high motor, but most entrepreneurs aren't going to make great CEOs. I'll make that bold statement, right? I mean, and that's okay. Like I say, we got to fill out the team and get after it, but I want to see right food, right category, right time.
So, which is harder to fix then, the food or the team?
Harder to fix. I would say the food is harder to fix because there's times where it's just got no chance. I mean, I will have people show up and they will show me pickled melon rind. And I got to tell you, it will be the best pickled rind you could ever create. They're never going to build a big business. I mean, I take a brand like Farmhouse Culture. That's next step, right? Fermentation's in, cultured veggies, things like smoked jalapeno kraut. They built a great professional team, but they're selling sauerkraut. It was never going to be a $50 million business. So it leveraged and took that same fermentation base, now launched a golden beet or red beet probiotic sparkling drink, and then also a chip that is based with ancient grains, but 51% by dry weight sauerkraut. So that's an example of taking a platform and expanding. But I say it's easier to fix the team. There's always challenges. I mean, I think of our own organization. We've been in business 28 years. People, it's like building a sports team, right? I used to say there's the Yankees and then there's the Cubs. Now I can kind of speak with them, hopefully in the same context. We'll see what the next 10 years holds. But you got to be, look at it not from an impersonal standpoint. We're all heart and love, but you got to build a team so that the parts are interchangeable. And there's always that. I mean, we have low turnover. We're lucky. We have 5 or 6% turnover a year, but that's 30 positions. And we got to make sure we're continuing to look at people, right person, right job, make the tinkering and the refinements to keep our edge.
Brands that are in the present system, what are the steps to success for them?
So you got to have all the important aspects of the business lined up. Like we talked about, right product, right category. You got to build a team, and you got to know when it's the right time to expand with personnel. There's all these stepping stones along the way. If you're a small brand and you don't think you're going to be a rocket ship, it's going to be more blocking and tackling, you would build with, call it old school terminology, like a master broker. Hire someone to manage the broker reps, be a good centralization point for various services. Some of those organizations can handle the back room for you as well, but you got to have the right people. You got to know when to get funded. I like what the gentleman before me talked about. Like when you know it's time to be funded, it's probably a little bit late. You got to just have it. You got to get your spider senses tingling and know when it's the right time to mobilize capital and then deploy it in the right areas. And then channel strategy. You got to, it's different because, there's different pricing strategies. I've seen a lot of great natural products that just are going to be very low velocity and have a tough ROI path in conventional. So you got to understand when it's time to cross over, when it's time to go broad. So it's that whole thing about tactically deploying, having your strategies aligned, having the right team. If you have the right food, you got a good chance then.
Now, they bring you that. What do they get in exchange for that?
Big hugs. Thank you. Because that's uncommon. But what they get is, we have a great team. We have sales reps and merchandisers, brand managers. We do innovation work at our place in Chicago, which is, I think, amongst the best in the industry. And they get all hands on deck. We take that very seriously. No matter how cool some of the other wizardry we do behind the curtain, I remind my guys, our service model is the most important part of our business. You got to go out and you got to execute. You got to build brands. And even if the needs may change, like right now, Whole Foods is tinkering with their model, becoming more sophisticated, going from a regional operator to a national operator. They're suggesting things like there's not going to be as much need to have brokers interface at store level. We'll see what happens when the dust settles. Manufacturers shouldn't want to hear that. They want to have their competitive edge, and they want us in the stores. And I think Whole Foods will come to find that even if they get a lot more organized and they're executing better, and other accounts that step up their merchandising, there's still going to be a lot of value add. And that's the whole thing about staying relevant. You just have to have an awareness of and allow for shifts and changes in the landscape, the marketplace with your customers, and adapt your product or service to continue to bring value.
So you think that the store will continue to be the key spoke in sort of the discovery wheel?
I think so. I absolutely do. And are you suggesting, like, in respect to now a comparison between buying product online and having it shipped to your home?
I'm saying Whole Foods, in that plane of stores, is the one where consumers will continue to discover new products.
I mean, I think there's others emerging. I think Sprouts, and you look around the country, there's some great independents, individual operators. But yes, I would say stores that have all clean products have a competitive advantage to start with, as opposed to a supermarket incorporating natural products. Then the key is get your pricing right, which doesn't mean lowest price, but get your pricing strategy right, and then make sure you understand. It's just like when you're a brand, you're telling your story when you're building your product. These guys have to remember it's an experience when you're shopping there. And as much as you hear about the digitalization and people not going into retail stores, believe me, 20 years from now, people are going to be flocking to retail stores. We're social creatures. Make it interesting and fun for them and give them great service and great products, and you will have still significant market share.
What are the key changes in that Whole Foods-based incubation strategy that Presence is keeping an eye on?
Well, because they have been the first premium operator to be national, and we've had a relationship with them all these years. They have been our go-to, and they have big market share. To this day, they're our number one customer. They play ball with us. I mean, they didn't even have category review schedules till 4 or 5 years ago. So they could go off, and they still can go off cycle every now and again. So you give them a 60, 90, sometimes 180-day head start, and they will give you preference, speed to shelf. They execute at a high level. They really get behind brands. As they're going through some challenges, getting beaten on a little bit by the street, and by the way, I think whoever's handling their PR, say to me, Jeff, like 3 times, call me whole paycheck once, call me it twice, we'll see what happens. I mean, they got to play better defense, okay? I mean, educate about the cost of quality food, and so I'd like to see them do a better job with that.
I think we have Whole Foods PR in the house.
Good. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd love to meet with them and talk about it, because it's heavy lifting. It's not their fault that every time an article's written, it's negative. And so we got to talk about it. I've got great contacts in the media. How do we build a better story and counteract that?
How do brands incubate when Whole Foods isn't the only place to do so?
Well, again, it was if you go back 5 years, it was that they were the launching pad. You give them an exclusive for a short period of time, and then you go to other natural food stores and premium grocers like Dierberg's and Wegmans were a couple examples. You get to a run rate that's comfortable, and then you look for players outside of that who are interested in your brand and your product and
Should
crossover.
strategies move more regional?
It depends. I think that's a good general posture. Like, I like the idea of brands starting regional for a few reasons, not the least of which is you kind of concentrate your resources and really see what works in terms of consumer activation. For some categories, demos are very important, for others not. Some product categories need to be off shelf and sell at a high percentage when they're on promotion. Others are more staple. So kind of understanding your formula and looking at that. And other changes today remain to remain flexible. You have to look at going broader, faster. The emergence of Kroger and Target, for example, is very good partners. Maybe you're not going to incubate at Whole Foods because their category review isn't for 7 months and you're ready to go, and you have one of those other guys stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, we'd love to work with you. Sprouts, another example.
The pressure to go broader, faster has derailed companies before. How do they prepare for it as they're going to go into those sort of 2,000 store channels, 5,000 store channels, as opposed to the 500-600 store channel?
Being ready for it is very important. I mean, no secret. It's, preparation, understanding what your velocities are going to be, because if you look at your store velocities at somewhere like a Whole Foods location, and then you look at a conventional account, the Whole Foods velocities on a store-by-store basis are going to be much more significant. So you have to model correctly. You have to have realistic expectations regarding your return on investment. You have to understand that your consumer activation vehicles aren't as handsy. I mean, you can get into the natural food stores and do a bunch of demos and all that. Not always the case in conventional. So it's really just understanding your expansion, market targets, and building a good game plan behind it.
It's more capital intensive though, right?
I would say on a typical basis, on an average basis, that would be yes, meaning generalized with that landscape. But there are some natural customers that are very expensive to do business with. So
That's true. Let's pull back and look at the sort of product type issues right now. What do you think of the top 3 trends affecting new food products, and how's that cutting across product categories?
there's a lot of stuff we could talk about. We could talk about the emergence of fat. I'll throw a few out there. You know, saturated fat's good for you. I always say, like, you know, you want to drop the microphone moment. I will make the bold proclamation that saturated fat is good for you, whether it's from vegetable or animal source. When you talk about animal saturated fats, of course, you have to be cognizant of the fact that we would be assuming that it's grass-fed or organic source, because a confined animal feeding lot with routine injections of antibiotics, growth hormones, GMO corn, toxins storing the fat of animals, you wouldn't make the same statement. But if you really look at the research, a lot of assumptions were made about fat and the implications with heart disease based on flawed science from the 1950s. It's simply not true. So fat's emergence is a big one, and also lower sugar. Lower sugar is different than people think, because it really only hit its tipping point about 3 years ago. And what happens when you start eating less sugar is not only does your health improve, your weight normalizes, your energy improves, your cognition fires better, but your taste change. You get more sensitive to the 5 tastes, and you quickly prefer less sweet taste. A transitional consumer wants a great product like Bai, right, where you get all the flavor, all the sweetness, but you reduce the calories and sugar. No secret that Chameleon cold brew concentrate, man, black coffee. I drink that stuff. I drink like 8 ounces of that stuff. I talk really fast for about an hour, but it's great. And no stevia, no monk fruit. I mean, big, bold flavor. And consumers are increasingly want less sweet taste. So low sugar, fat's back in. I'll tell you, we could talk about grain-free being a bigger driver than people think. I'll tell you this right now, grain-free, call it grain-free / paleo, although paleo is more of a moment in time. It's a lifestyle, a little more restrictive in terms of the food that was available and consumed during the Paleolithic period. We prefer grain-free as longer-term kind of brand, like halo architecture for the category. People want to eat more protein, they want to eat more fat, and they want to be more thoughtful about their carbohydrate consumption. Grain-free is a great platform, but it's got to be right brand, it's got to fit your messaging. And then bone broth. I mean, you'll recall, Jeff, I think I was going to owe you and your family a luxury vacation.
No, Cadillac.
Still might if the numbers don't come in, but 3 years ago we pegged bone broth when there was zero commerce as a $600 million annual category by 2020. I'm sticking with that story, and we'll discuss more about that during tomorrow's segment. But suffice it to say that we've got 3 brands in the category, and let's just say by year's end, we'll already be blowing past 100.
Saturated fat is good for you. Grain-free and paleo are influencing food products. Low sugar is in all these things require massive lifts in terms of manufacturing, supply chain, and consumer change. Where are we in terms of developing the sort of infrastructure to support those trends?
Well, I mean, I think the large consumer products goods company, Coca-Cola, Pepsi comes to mind, they are smartly adapting to deliver what consumers want today, and a lot of that's being driven through their acquisition platforms. And there are good manufacturing sources on a national level now for products that are incorporating, some of the sugar alcohols. I think the only sugar alcohol that's going to go broad in food is erythritol, which is a horrible name. It sounds like a gasoline derivative or something. But it's the one that's probably going to stick if you look at all of them. And then, of course, monk fruit, stevia, and hopefully over time, there's other non-nutritive sweeteners that are healthier. But I do think that you'll continue to see actual unsweetened products. You might see, like sugar's always going to sell, right? But you might see like a normal soda, like you drink a root beer, right? A natural root beer, 42 grams of sugar in 12 ounces, that's 10.5 teaspoons. perhaps the normal level of full taste soda in 5 or 7 years is more like 18 to 22 grams. So that's what you'll see, and it'll still taste like an indulgence.
So it's a curve as well as a... So you going to stick around to see who wins the challenge?
I would love to.
All right, well, let's all find out.
Sounds great.
Thanks for joining
All right,
us.
For sure. Pleasure. Yeah, great to see you. Thanks. Thank you.